I am a psychotherapist. I have been a psychotherapist for the last 35 years. All of those 35 years has been on oncology. 5 years of that was in Ohio, in a cancer center in Ohio, in a small town there at a little cancer center with three wonderful oncologists. After 5 years of living in the snow belt, if any of you have ever spent any time in a snow belt with the snow coming off of Lake Erie, in the last winter when I couldn't find my car, I decided that it was probably time for me to move out of the snow belt. And I looked south, never having been south before in my life. My family's all up in New England, and thought that I would come to what I thought was Charlotte, South Carolina. Didn't know anything about the South. Had an opportunity for a position that looked like a coordinator of a cancer support program was how it was posed. And 30 years ago, this past September, I accepted a job in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I have been here ever since. So a job that I came here for a couple of years turned out to be much longer. When I moved here to Charlotte, now over 30 years ago, it was myself, a medical oncologist. His name was Herman Godwin, one nurse, clinical nurse specialist. Those positions don't even exist anymore. And one research nurse. And that was the cancer center. So we've grown. We didn't have a name. We were not the Blumenthal Cancer Center at that time. We just were serving cancer patients. And so we eventually became the Blumenthal Cancer Center under the guidance of Herman Godwin, and eventually to the very large Levine Cancer Institute that we have today. Through all of that time, I have been supporting, providing counseling, therapy to patients, family members. I do a lot of couple counseling. I see a lot of caregivers and spouses as well, understanding that they are certainly in the center of the storm and center of the process as well. So a couple of months ago, Leslie sent me an email, and it's been a while since we've been able to get, and then the holidays came and it was COVID. And one of the things that happened this past year that was even unique to me is that there was a tremendous amount of distress. So the combination of people being diagnosed with cancer, having cancer recurrences, and going through COVID and not being able to see their children and their grandchildren and a myriad of other things caused a pretty challenging year as a therapist. To be honest with you, we've been extremely busy. So it was difficult to kind of find the time and figure out the best time to make this happen. Now to the topic. I hope that I serve you well. I am a psychotherapist by trade. And so I thought to myself, how to be an effective and caring mentor. Honestly, I think any one of you could give this talk, right? You should be giving this talk to me. You could give this talk and do it 1,000 times better than I. And so I come to you in this spirit of being incredibly humble and very self-aware that this is probably not my topic. I deal with people, I deal with anxiety and depression and adjustment disorder and communication and trauma and intimacy issues. Wow. But making sure that I'm the best making sure that I'm the best person to be able to kind of give thoughts about being a good mentor is probably a little bit outside my wheelhouse. So I'll tell you a little bit of how I approach this very kind of short talk that I'm going to give, because I don't feel as if I'm the expert here. Is that I chose to go from the direction of what I feel like as a therapist, what I have learned that has been important in kind of standing in that space with people that you are supporting. And so I come to you from that perspective. That I know. And that's something that I am mindful of and intentional about every single day. So that is my focus, and that is kind of the direction. It's going to be, it's not complex. It is not going to be rocket science. It's not going to be something that you haven't heard before. So I think that probably for the lion's share of the people on this call, this will be a friendly reminder of some of those things that we need to be mindful of when we're sitting in the gap and sitting in the space of being a support, a mentor, a listening ear, somebody who has chosen to be there in somebody else's pain. So with that said, that's kind of the direction that I went, because that's what I know. In the process of doing that, I should say that it was good to hear and see that as something that I already knew. I came across two articles that just kind of confirmed to me why you do what you do, and they were studies that were done with oncology mentors in cancer centers to try to discern whether or not that service that people provides a value. And universally, unconditionally, the three things that it showed that mentors in oncology had significantly decreased patients that they're helping and supporting, decreasing their stress, decreasing the sense of isolation, and decreases the fear, specifically around newly diagnosed cancer patients. What's interesting about that study is that that's what we as therapists do, right? So if you looked at therapeutic studies of what psychotherapists do, three things that the studies show is that they decrease stress, they decrease sense of isolation, and they decrease fear, specifically around newly diagnosed cancer patients. So I think it's really important to kind of start in kind of going into the process, just understanding the value. You may already know that, and that's why you're in that. But I'm going to tell you, as a therapist, I don't always know whether what I'm doing is efficacious or has any value. We don't always get that feedback. So that's why there's studies out there to show that. So I just want to say that two things. One is that when we're decreasing stress, that's the byproduct of anxiety. Anxiety is something that is imperative that kind of we manage and are as proactive as we can in managing that. So if we know we're decreasing people's stress, then we're helping with their anxieties as well. The other thing too is that one of the things that happened this past year that complicated people's mental health is that sense of isolation. So it is also, and one of the things that happens when people feel isolated is that they have a greater proclivity for melancholy. I'm not to say that one is going to experience depression, but there is a greater proclivity for melancholy. So to recognize in both of these studies that there was a decrease in a sense of isolation is huge. So just right out of the gate, I just say thank you for what you do, for your willingness to kind of to be in that space and to be willing to support and be mentors to people in the meaningful ways that you're able to do that. Today, interestingly enough, I have two things. One is, before we get started, I want everybody to grab a piece of paper and just, write down, because when I'm finished in 10 or 15 minutes here, I really want to hear from you. And if you have one question or one thought or one frustration or one thing that has been challenging for you or that you have a question about, because I took a shot in the dark as to what's going to be helpful for you. I want this time to be meaningful for you. So go ahead and write it down, and we'll circle back around. And if we didn't talk about it, let's talk about it on the other side of this. And I look forward to that opportunity. I looked at today with just really the topic at hand, because like I said, today was the first time I had a chance to talk with Leslie, and that's my fault, not hers. I'm crazy busy, and she's trying to email me like crazy, and I'm marginally getting back to her. So my apologies for all of that. But the topic is how to be an effective care and caring mentor. So I took that in my head as 4 pillars that are important as if for anybody that is providing support in any capacity. So this is important, in my opinion, if you're supporting a person and you're a physician, if you're a nurse, if you're a psychotherapist, if you're a volunteer, if you're a mentor. So so that's how important I think these 4 pillars are. So that's the direction that I kind of took this in terms of what I think is kind of important to be a good mentor. And so the fourth areas that I'm just going to briefly touch upon is the first one is self-awareness and self-care. And I can't stress either one of those any stronger. They're the first things as a psychotherapist that we have to be mindful of, or we're not good at our job. So self-awareness and self-care is one pillar. The second pillar to being, in my opinion, an effective and caring mentor is understanding the importance of empathy, right? And really kind of understanding what that looks like and what that means. The third pillar for me, is something that I actually stole from Stephen Covey. And if any of you remember, he wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things that one of his great quotes, which has a lot of value here, and in so much value that I'm going to put it as our third pillar, and that is listening to understand versus listening to respond. So the third pillar is listening to understand versus listening to respond. And the last one is the last pillar, because I always think we should have 4. That keeps the stool steady, right? It's all about balance. The fourth one for me is healthy boundaries, and kind of what that looks like as a mentor, and why we have to, and why all 4 of these things, even when we know them, we need to be reminded of them. So that's kind of the direction that I'm going. I'll glance down on occasion to my notes, just so that I want to make sure that I, cover the things what I think are generally important, or what I kind of thought about when I was putting this together and considering what would be the good message. So the first thing that I just want to kind of talk about when we talk about that first that first element, or that first pillar, if you will, is the idea of self-awareness, and it's totally my opinion, but I think it's essential for any mutually satisfying relationship. So if we're going to have a satisfying relationship, whether it's a one-time or two-time gig, and we just kind of meet somebody and we do it, or we have a long-term relationship with them, we need to have a level of self-awareness. And for me, my understanding of self-awareness kind of looks like this. We have a clear understanding and perception of our strengths. We have a clear and clear understanding and perception of our challenges or our weaknesses. We have a clear and understanding about our belief system, and we have a clear and understanding about our motivation and our emotions. So with that, self-awareness is a primary and necessary aspect of empathy. Without self-awareness, we do not have empathy. So to me, self-awareness does a few things. It helps us keep an open mind to other people. It helps us to understand and know our emotional triggers. For example, how do we feel when do we have triggers around certain smells? Do we have triggers around the fact that about an experience, about a dialogue around a cancer experience that may be different than ours, or maybe similar to somebody that we've known that passed away. It's not that we're not. The thing is to understand is that it is not bad to have a trigger. The challenge is when we deny that we have those triggers and they affect us in ways that are not conducive or productive to the relationship. So everybody has triggers, right? We have smells, we have different belief systems, we may have different experiences around treatment options and different belief systems in terms of how you provide support and listening to somebody versus somebody that's on this line that does it very differently. So the benefits of good self-awareness is to be able to take a step back from our emotions and respond instead with humility, empathy, and being a better listener. So it's important to realize that when I say self-awareness and I say our strengths and our weaknesses are challenge. Those are part of our humility. That's part of our growth. I said right out of the gate, this is not my area of expertise, and I know that. So it's just kind of understanding that. So the other part of that, the other part of self-awareness, same pillar, is self-care. These two things, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you'll realize that when I go through the others, we'll go through very quickly. I feel very strongly about these two. I think what I see sometimes in our healthcare providers, in other people that are providing a service, and they do it from a really good place in their heart, but they're not exercising good self-care. And the result of that is that they start operating from a place of frustration or fatigue or resentment because they're not exercising self-care. So once we recognize have that level of self-awareness in terms of what we need, it's really, really important that we take care of ourselves in ways that are meaningful for you. So in full disclosure, early on in my career, I didn't do good self-care. I didn't have good boundaries. I stayed late. I worked too many hours. I gave too much of myself, and I got overtired. I ended up giving from what I consider to be an empty well. So, you're scraping the last bits of moisture and you're trying to give it away. And I haven't done that for many years now. But I paid the price for that. And so one of the things that I've learned, and that I also kind of send as a message, is self-care is essentially learning ways to manage your stress. So there's 4 elements to self-care that are really, really important. One is our physical health. One is our intellectual health. One is our emotional health. And one is our social health, our spiritual health. We do not need to do all of those every day and every aspect of our life. We just have to realize that if I'm giving of myself in a way that already has emotional undertones, I have to call Sally tomorrow. I know Sally has just been diagnosed with a breast cancer, and she's making a decision around what kind of surgery she's having, and she understands that I had this particular, and I'm going to meet with her. What do I know about myself in order to be the best mentor for her that I need to do to manage my own self-care? And so for me, I'll tell you some of the things that I do. It may not be things that you do, but it's something that every single morning, 7 days a week, I take a 2-mile jog. Rain, snow, sleet, that may not be for everybody. I did not do that all my life. I realized that if I'm going to sit in the space with people all day long, I need to make sure that I manage my physical health. Every single solitary day, no matter how challenging and no matter how demanding my day was emotionally, no matter how many people I sat with and listened to what they were saying, I go home and end my day every single day with 3 things that I'm grateful for about that day. Why? Because I know that rewires my brain How I receive information goes through a dendrite and synapse process in our brain. And so the way we receive our information of that day and how we process it can be programmed in a way that allows us to be able to take a deep breath and recognize the gratitude for that day. That's an emotional aspect of my wellness and well-being that becomes very, very important. I know I'm not a good therapist, mentor, caregiver, whatever you want to say, if I don't take care of myself. The other aspect of that is spiritual health. If it's important for you and care as women, and I'm a woman, right? We have to remind ourselves the importance, and especially when we've chosen to share our passion and our presence and our gift and our kindness and stand with people who are going through difficult times, the same difficult time that you went through, then it's so imperative, even more imperative, that we recognize the importance of how to fill our own well, how to fill our own tank. So the other thing that I do, and so this is your journey, but I'm just going to share some of the things. When I worked in Ohio, there was a psychotherapist that was a colleague of mine, but she was at a different cancer institute. She was at the Ireland Cancer Institute. Some of you may have heard of her. Some of you may have listened to her meditations. If you haven't, I highly recommend them. Her name was Bella Ruth Napperstack. She has a website called Health Journeys. Write it down. She is fabulous. Those moments when you want to she has a wonderful voice. She has an incredible way to bring you back to center in a way. I've never heard anybody else have this gift. And she would end all her sessions with 10 minutes of meditation. It's so important to be able to recognize that I want to give the best part of me. And in order to do that, and I am repeating myself, we have to fill our well first. So that kind of thing, those kinds of things can be helpful. Those are things that I do. There's journaling, there's exercise, there's yoga. But I just want to make sure that we don't forget that, because what I have found, and probably not with you mentors, but a lot of times I see patients that come back years after their cancer, through their recovery, and they realize that they really hadn't kind of taken care of themselves or leaned into some of the other parts of their wellness, or more importantly, they did all the work and they worked really hard at it. They supported a lot of people through the process, and then they got to a place where they stopped doing it and they hit a brick wall, right? They were like, I know that was really helpful for a while. Something's not right. I don't feel like I'm doing it. And part of that is that they stopped doing what they knew was helpful for them. So that's just, kind of food for thought and just an element of that pillar of self-care. The next pillar that I just want to touch upon briefly, and only because and like I said, you any one of you could talk about this, any and all of this, but I think it's important to just mention in terms of how to be an effective mentor, because it's how to be an effective anything when you are taking care of and supporting somebody else through a journey that is unfamiliar to them. And that is empathy. And in the most general definition, and yet the most meaningful definition of empathy is taking a moment and putting yourself in their shoes. And you do it every single time that you meet with someone, talk with someone, text someone. But it's really, really important, because what I found is that when there's any kind of challenge or issue, is that those are the most important moments where we need to kind of pause, put ourselves in that person's shoes, even for a few minutes. And immediately we see them through softer eyes, right? We take a moment and we see them and us in this whole experience through soft eyes, and realize that their experience is unique to them and unique to their journey. the three things that I think, the reason that I mention empathy as a pillar is because I think it does three things, and it's incredibly important. I don't know why that fuzz is there. It's incredibly important to me, and why it's important for me to just share. And that is that empathy does three things instinctively without you having to do anything but taking that symbolic moment to put your feet in their shoes. And that is, it builds trust, which is essentially the foundation of any relationship you'll ever have in your life, is that it's built on trust, and empathy helps to establish that trust. It, interestingly enough, actually calms anxiety, right? Because all we're doing is kind of stopping and being in that space with them. And the other part of that is that there's a feeling of being heard and not judged. And I think that is key. I think that you and I and all of us in this space can understand that one of the things that a cancer diagnosis does instinctively, just by nature of the diagnosis, is that it creates a sense of loss of security and loss of innocence. And those two aspects of that journey creates a space that doesn't feel safe. And when we are able to provide a level of empathy and be able to allow them to feel that safety and security that has momentarily feels vacuous, is incredibly important to the relationship and a meaningful part of that process. The third pillar that I will mention is that of which I stole from Steve Covey, and that is to listen to understand versus listening to respond. And I'm not really going to say a lot about this. This is something that comes up a lot in relationships. You might think about it in relationships with your children or your spouse, or it's what we do, right? We come into a relationship sometimes, or a conversation, with our own agenda, right? I know that I'm going to be calling Sally, and Sally's anticipating having a bilateral mastectomy. Well, I had a bilateral mastectomy, so I kind of know what that's about. So I'm eager to be able to share her and support her. And so we go in kind of with this idea. So Sally starts to talk, but we've already got our agenda in mind in terms of what's the best way to respond to her. And what I'm saying to you, and you can extrapolate anything you want from it, other than the fact that it's an incredibly powerful message, and the simple message is listen to understand versus listen to respond. And essentially what that means is coming into any relationship without an agenda, right? We don't have, and the best thing that I can say about that, and I say this all the time, and that is that the word listen, I don't think it's a mistake that the word listen has the same letters as the word silent does, right? So we listen, L-I-S-T-E-N, S-I-L-E-N-T, and so it means kind of being present without an agenda. And I think that changes the dynamic and keeps us just generally open to whatever that interaction is intended to be, and to whatever capacity we are intended to be a support or a mentor in that space and in that moment. The last pillar that I will say is just establishing boundaries. And I threw this in here because I think that this is so easy to say and sometimes so difficult to know how and what that's supposed to mean or look like. And I just wrote, for me, I wrote kind of a lot of little scribbled notes down about it, just kind of off the top of my head. So generally speaking, why I said boundaries is because boundaries promote honesty in a relationship, right? So if we're saying right out of the gate, we're upfront about our availability, and we are upfront about setting expectations. I'm Meg, and I'm really eager to support you. I'm not really available a lot by telephone, but I will text you and I will send you cards and I will support you. And I will check in and you're always welcome to call me, but I'm not really, I go to bed at 8 o'clock or whatever the case may be. It's just important that we set that expectation and that it's clear out of the gate, because otherwise we as mentors operate on guilt because, oh my goodness, I haven't done that. I should have done that. And I wonder if they're wondering if I should do that. And did I do that? Or I should have sent a card. Did I send a card? Did I send a card? Do they care if I send a card? But we just so we set the expectations out of the gate, right? So that's clear, and it clarifies the expectations. And guess what it does again? It creates a safe space, because I know that you're going to be honest with me. I can be honest with you. And that creates a safety that is invaluable to the relationship, whether it's a relationship of a week, or whether it's a relationship of a month, or whether it's a relationship of a day. It's important that we create that clarity and understanding about what that's intended to look like and what we're able to do. So, one of the things that I will say, though, that happens without boundaries, and just so that you can kind of understand the byproduct of it and what it looks like, very often people who have not established clear boundaries, these are the things that you will see. There will be more cynicism. There's more resentment. So I have an old cliche in my mind that plays out quite readily daily because I see it a lot. And that is expectations or premeditated resentments. And that is, I expect somebody else to understand, what I need, what my boundaries are, and then I resent the heck out of them when they don't understand that, or I resent myself, or I resent. And so I think that, and also, what I also see is, with a lack of boundaries is what I'm talking, an undervaluing of confidentiality. I see operating from frustration. And so I'm not necessarily saying this specifically as mentors. I'm saying this in any kind of relationship where we're giving from our well and putting it in somebody else's well, right? We're giving our expertise, our love, our time, our gift, our presence. And so when we're doing that, we're giving from our well to that well. And if we don't set that up kind of clearly, then it can create some confusion. And the end result is that we end up not following up because we feel frustrated. In a lot of times it's from a lack of clarity around boundaries. So I threw that in there because I feel like it's kind of an important pillar. And I always feel like we should have 4 pillars for our stool for balance. So the last thing that I'm going to say today is this. I thought a lot about this day. This is essentially maybe one of the first times. There might have been another time many years ago now, but I just want to kind of share, and this is just kind of a moment of memory for me. And some of you have maybe been around long enough to know the person that erected that building, that you go and have fellowship in and have come together to share your gifts. But I remember very clearly the Tuesday night that I was having a support group, and Christy Ebel came bubbling down this hallway saying that she had a dream, and that God had spoken to her, and that she was eager to she wanted to create a space for breast cancer survivors to come together to support and anchor each other through the storms. She wanted them to have fellowship, to laugh, to create a space that's safe. And I don't remember a lot over my 30 years. It's got a lot of water under the bridge, but I remember that conversation like it was yesterday. I remember what she was wearing. I remember where we were standing. And I remember saying to her, if there's anybody that can make this happen, Christy, it's you. And the rest is history. And you are part of that history. And you have a gift. And one of the things about being a mentor is in why it can sometimes feel we can get weary, maybe even, I don't like overused cliches, but maybe even burn out sometimes, wonder if we're making a difference, is that you chose to give your gift and give your time in an area where people are hurting. And hurting people don't oftentimes provide feedback always. They may come back later, so we don't always see or hear that immediate gratification. Know you're making a difference. Know that you are making a difference. One patient, two patients, five patients at a time, one patient in a year, two patients in a month. It doesn't matter, right? One touch of a patient, 6 touches of a patient, no one's counting. The fact is that you've chosen to stand in that space and be there with them. Honor their journey. Take time out of your day to answer questions, stand in that space with them. Let them weep, let them laugh, whatever it is that they're experiencing in that moment, you're there with them, sending them a card, letting them know that you're thinking about them on their first chemo, whatever it is that you've chosen to do that. And all I can say is I know that Christy is smiling somewhere up there, because there's ever a person that deserves to be in heaven and glory, it's Christy. So she is smiling up there. And I quietly had a little conversation with her before our talk today. And I said to her, if there's something that I need to say, Christy, this is your time to let me know. I will be your conduit. So I hope that I made her proud in some way. She certainly made me proud with everything that she did. She was the strongest young woman I've ever known. And one of the few people that probably touched my life forever in my 35 years of working in cancer, and not just because she built brick by brick, she and Chris built brick by brick that building, but because of just her spirit. She wasn't here long, but she did more in her young life than people live to be 95. So know that you're making a difference, and please understand the importance. And it is as simple as it sounds. Please understand the importance of filling your well, filling that tank, doing your due diligence to take care of you in ways that are going to be able to. Because I've been in that space of scraping the sides of my own well and trying to give it away, and it doesn't work. So fill it up with whatever it is. Fill it up with your exercise or meditation or artwork or mindfulness or community or conversations with each other or whatever it is that's going to be meaningful, your laughter, your joy, and then trust and know. Take a moment to look at that person, reflection, looking back at you in the mirror, and say, well done, right? See that person with soft eyes and recognize that you're doing a good thing, and you have and people are better for it. So thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Wow, Meg, I'm meeting you today for the first time, even though we've talked by email quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wowed. And to end your talk, reminding us that you knew Christy, and Christy was the founder of Carolina Breast Friends, that was so powerful. And we feel her presence a lot at the Pink House. And we hope every day that we're doing what she wants us to do. So, and this,
I think she's present here right now with us as well, and I think she is in everything. She was a strong force, and a strong and filled with passion, and would want nothing more than this mentor program. This was her. I mean, we sat for hours and talked about what this would look like and her vision and what she wanted. And this is, and you know, sure, she wants nutrition classes and all those things, but she wanted survivors helping survivors. That's what she wanted. That's what she, and so this group that is on here today are kind of the core people of what that concept. Sure, it has a myriad of things that you're offering and doing which are invaluable, but that piece is and we forget that sometimes, right? We get weary, we wonder, we all do, you know, but yeah, Christy, this was it, right? This was how it was intended to be. So she's here, she feels it. So
I agree. I totally agree. And our mentor team is the most awesome group of women, and so devoted, so dedicated, so eager to give back. And I'm just, thank you for being with us tonight. And I'd like to open up the floor and just have everybody who's comfortable just, you know, speak out. And you said before that you wanted people to write down a question.
Well, just if you had a thought or a question, you know, even before the talk started, because I didn't want it to be swayed by that. If there's something that you come today kind of hoping to hear, and I don't know what that is, and if I can help, I will, and if I can't, I'll be honest. But I would certainly be willing to kind of lean into that as well.
Perfect. So I would just encourage you, I can call out names if you want me to, and kind of go across the top. Kathy.
Okay. Hi, Meg. I am a 15-year survivor, and I attended your wonderful classes at CMC. One of the most helpful classes that you offered was the Look Good, Feel Better program. And that changed, that changed my life so much when my hair was coming out and I was so afraid. And I was in that group, and you brought professionals in that showed us that this is just temporary, and let's have fun with this. You can, you know, all the creative ways to dress your head up if you felt like you needed to, but all of your programs were so wonderful, and I needed you so much. And a lot of us at Carolina Breast Friends owe a deep gratitude to you for what you did during our journey and what you continue to do for our newly diagnosed survivors.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your words of wisdom tonight too. And I love it that you shared about Christy. And I think of all of us on this Zoom call as we are Christy's warriors. We are out there trying to emulate what she showed us, what she taught us. So, and those are big shoes to fill. But I did want to ask you two quick things. You mentioned the health journeys, and that sounded really interesting to me. And that's Bella Ruth. And what was her last name?
I'll spell it. It's N like in Nancy, A, P like in Peter, A, R, S like in Sam, T like in Tom, E, K, Napperstack.
Okay, health journeys.
And Bella Ruth is one word, Belleruth, and she's fabulous.
Thank you. I love that.
When you get on health journeys, that's just for cancer. There's anxiety, trauma around cancer, sleep. But she has them for everything now. But her cancer ones are outstanding and really applicable if you don't have cancer. Right. So they're really, but she's just, she's got an incredible voice, a really powerful way of using her message to foster calm. So I hope you you find it helpful.
I definitely will. Thank you for sharing that. And then real quickly, would you give us just a brief outline of what programs currently are available at LCI for the newly diagnosed? It's just been a while since I've been there. And I know with nutrition, I have recommended the nutritional programs. I know there's meditation programs, there's music therapy. If you just can quickly remind us all of what programs that are available to the survivors, that would be great.
Yeah. So let me, you would be surprised how many things are available right now that I was going to see, but I will. So I say that only, I say this to say, so we have all kinds of things. I was looking for our newsletter because we have about 12 support groups now, and meditation and mindfulness and yoga and Tai Chi and acupuncture and massage. And so the best thing, the LCI site now has a pretty up-to-date and pretty comprehensive resource. I will say that the frustration, and it's me, probably the rest of the world loves everything by technology, I guess, but a lot of things are still done virtually, even except for the things like the healing touch and the massage, acupuncture. Those things are in person. But the nutrition classes, Pat has fabulous nutrition classes, but they're essentially online right now. And there are several different new support groups that the social workers are primarily facilitating at this point. There's music therapy. So I will make it a point to maybe send Leslie, I'll send and try to send a newsletter so that you can have that, and maybe she can distribute that so you have a more thorough, and without me just rambling about the things, because it doesn't help just without knowing when they are or how to contact anyone.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Who else would like to say something?
I have a question.
Yes, Susan.
Well, I had this before, and I'm a new mentor. And my question is around the expectations of the mentee, of the survivor. So I've had situations where, like, I have one person who I could I like to talk on the phone or, feel more personal. And she's a texter, and she'll do a long text. And, so I've sort of learned that's okay. That's what works for her. But the question is around how frequently, I don't want to bother people. And sometimes I've felt like, okay, I've called them a couple of times or left messages, they haven't gotten back to me. Is that okay? Is that me? I guess I'm not sure of the expectation. I don't want them to feel like they have to take care of me. I'm there to take care of them. But I don't want to, go a month and then them feel like, well, why hasn't she, kept in touch? I'm not sure what that expectation needs to be, or maybe you're saying set that, or kind of talk about that up front.
So my feeling is around that, and I don't know if Leslie has kind of a policy and procedure in that, but my feeling is that that is a lot more comfortable when it's set up front, right? So right out of the gate. So listen, what would be, I know that you don't know right now, and we can certainly be flexible, right? You're not necessarily going to know what's going to be helpful in every chapter and every crossroads that you come to. But what I would be able to do for you is be able to, I could reach out. I could send a card. I could send a text. Is there something that, with your schedule that would be helpful for you or meaningful? And I think just kind of creating kind of some conversation around that out of the gate, it just sets to be honest with you, again, that's a little bit of that's for you as well. That's your boundary as well. This is what I am able to do, or what I would love to be able to do for you. But I also think that the other thing that I would say is that, sometimes we have to, in relationships, and whatever the relationship is, we always have to be careful not to project, right? And so if we are feeling like we may be a bother, right? Oh gosh, I wonder if I'm, kind of bothering that person, then we project that they think that we're a bother, right? We think, oh God, and so I think that, there is always the opportunity to be able to support people in a myriad of ways, right? And so again, if you set it up out of the gate, then it's clear. But even if you I don't know, sent a card or said, because I find that I think that especially early on for new patients, they're overwhelmed, and then later they're underwhelmed because nobody's there, right? They're all there early on, right? Here we are, where can we go? But people generally have a very short attention span, and they don't stand in that space for long, and they go away. And so what I would say is, in my experience and the tiers that I have in my office oftentimes, is everybody is there early on and nobody is there later, right? So I think that we just have to kind of establish a dialogue that just, is open and upfront out of the gate, and says, I'm here for the long haul in whatever capacity that might mean. If I don't hear back from you, I'll take it that you're busy and that this isn't a good time, and that's okay. I just want you to essentially know that I'm thinking about you, and I will check in again later. And that's it, right? But that's a statement right out of the gate. That's right out of the gate. No pressure. You don't have to get back to me. If you want to, I am here. If not, I'm just letting you know that I'm thinking about you and I haven't forgotten about you.
I like that. Thank you.
I love that. And I think that's the thing that we struggle with the most. Mm-hmm. And kind of as the director of the mentor program, I struggle with reaching back out to my mentors and following up and saying, have you been able to get in touch with whoever the new survivor might be? Please let me know when you're able to connect. And, I don't want to be pushy. I just want to make sure that person, again, knows that we're there, we're reaching out. And I love the idea, like you said, Meg, of setting boundaries with that first conversation. And then that way,
that's expectations. That's the boundary right out of the gate.
I love it.
The expectation is you don't have to reach back out. If you want to, I'm calling to let you know that I'm here. And if you don't, it's okay. Either way, I want you to know that I'm thinking about you on that day. And I have to be honest with you, for a patient, and it hasn't been that long since for a patient, that means the world, right? That somebody's out there standing in the gap. They may not have the energy to reach out, but it means the world to know that somebody out there cares.
Exactly. And I do think, and tell me if you disagree with this or not, Meg, I do think that it's okay 2 weeks later or 10 days later to maybe reach out again.
Yeah.
And just because somebody doesn't respond to your first request, don't take that to mean that they don't want to hear from you at all, that they're not interested in having a mentor. And I do worry that some of the mentors will say, well, I never heard back from her, so I feel bad about reaching out to her again. I don't want to be a pest. I do think there's a happy medium, and we need to be a little bit persistent, but we need to not be too persistent.
Right. I think, to be honest with you, yes, Leslie, I think that's perfectly, but I also think that you can communicate that right out of the gate.
I agree totally with those boundaries.
But I think the thing is that being able to kind of that creates a safe place. That creates a space where we're being upfront and honest, and I'm here, and I know that you probably won't, but I'll try again, and that's okay. And if that's going to make, then there's nobody is feeling that same kind of thing that I said earlier. Oh, I feel guilty. Should I? I don't wonder if they're wondering, because it's all been clear. It's all been said.
Perfect. I love that. I think that's our biggest problem, knowing if it's okay to reach back out when we haven't heard from somebody. So that's great to set the boundary.
Yeah. I think that was very helpful. That was my question too, that of the things that we've done. And I like the way you walk through that, even when we have done that and laid out some things and some context, and just to follow up, because I think sometimes further down the road, right now, some people can't process any more information.
Right.
And I know for me, the hardest time was after all this was finished and I went back for my first mammogram, and they said, you need a biopsy. And that was when I, really realized I needed somebody to talk to, so I think there are things like that happen along the way that then we're ready, and there aren't people standing there then. But that's very helpful, Meg. I'm going to be listening to this again before I contact mentors.
So you are recording it. Good grief, Leslie. Okay.
Yes, recording it.
I don't know that it's record worthy, but all right.
Oh, it definitely is.
It definitely is.
Trust
definitely.
us. We are so honored to have you with us. This is exactly what I hoped for, and so much more. Who else would like to make a comment? Tami, I see your hand.
Thank you. So, hey, Meg, I'm Tami Griffith. I'm a 2-year survivor. And what I remember, and still to this day is very important to me, is I had a friend that we're road cyclists, and he would ride with me, and he didn't even know up front for a while that I had cancer, but he was there for me to ride with me whenever. And what he did after he found out is he would send me a text saying, hey, just checking in. And it meant so much the way he worded it. I'm just checking in. There was no expectations. And it was just kind of open-ended. And he still does that to this day, even though a lot has changed and I'm in a different place and he's in a different place. And that's what I've tried to do with other people. I'm just checking in. And I don't say to see how you're doing or anything, just checking in, and then they can respond, but just to let them know I'm thinking about them. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is, and I found this, I think it's really interesting with therapists and with police officers, is how they are so good at listening. So do you have some, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you on my other screen, not into the camera. Do you have some suggestions, some things that we could focus on, like things that we need to think about when we're trying to be better listeners? And I've done that recently, tried to listen, not to respond, but to listen, to hear what they're saying. But do you have some things that early on in your career or whatever that you had to remind yourself to do or not to do so that you could be a better listener and so that you could really hear what the person was saying and hear their heart?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know that I have any kind of secret about that other than being quiet, right? I think it's as easy. I think that that listening is there's more to that, and part of that is the authenticity that comes from that space. And so what you're really creating is a space that's safe and a message of authenticity. And that is really kind of trusting yourself. That's who you are. And all your job is to just sit in that space and be that person, right? You wouldn't have chosen. So I think it's asking open-ended questions and then just listening, right? That's it. So
That's hard. That's really hard sometimes.
It is hard.
You want to jump in and give advice or, you know, give them a tip or something, but I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that you can do that when you say, what is it, how is it that I can help you? Because that's an open-ended question. And then what are you going to do? You're just going to stop and listen, right? You don't have to how, so that's an open-ended question. When you say, how are you today? I'm fine, is what you're going to get. I'm okay. Nah, I'm fair. So then we feel the need to fill that space with conversation, because we just asked a closed-ended question and got a closed response. But if you say, what can I do to help you today? What is it, you know, what's been on your mind? Tell me a little bit about, and then you just stop and listen. You're not coming with an agenda. You're not imagining, if somebody, if you know somebody that you're going to be talking to.
Meg, we're having just a little trouble hearing you. There's a little bit of background static. I think is your phone moving or is it still?
I don't know. Is it moving? If it was moving, it wasn't intentional. So
that is so much better.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, just open-ended questions and just be present. It's not, I don't know that there's a secret. It comes with a little bit of time and practice and comfort and not having answers and being okay with that, and not having an agenda and being okay with that, right? That means that we may go into a space that feels that feels maybe having an agenda is part of our control, right? Then we're in charge, right? I have an agenda. I can tell, like, I know she wants to have a mastectomy and I had a mastectomy, so I can't wait to tell her what it's like to have a mastectomy. Well, that's an agenda. So what if we don't have an agenda, we're just coming into saying, hey, Sally, my name's Meg. I really was looking forward to meeting you. Tell me a little bit about what's going on. How can I help you? And just listen, right? And just because we all want to rescue, we all want to have answers, but sometimes that's not always helpful. Maybe helpful, but it's not always helpful. So it's just being comfortable, I think, with maybe not having as much control as well, right? We're just going to let go and kind of give ourselves. And I love the idea of earlier, and I didn't get to the comment that was made about just, sending messages and saying, I'm thinking about you, or I hope you're having a good day. That's it's not all about just kind of, being silent and listening and not having an agenda and, coming in, but it's also just, being of a support and letting folks know. Because I can't tell you, one of the things that I hear over and over and over again, and when I say is that everybody, and I'm not saying they're not talking specifically about mentors, but I think everybody is there early on and nobody is there later. And I know I said that earlier, but I just think it's important, even out of the gate, to say you're going to be overwhelmed at first. There's going to be a lot of information coming to you. If there's ever a time that you want to process any of that or hear about my experience or I am here. But this is your journey, and I'm going to let you kind of be the captain of that ship. But in the same token, I've been there and I know how overwhelming it can be. And I am here to be able to walk that with you in every way that's going to be helpful. In the meantime, I'm just going to check in every once in a while. I'll send you a text, send you a card, and I will be here. And I will check in again later when people start disappearing. I will still be here in whatever capacity that's going to be helpful for you. So that doesn't answer the listening question that effectively, but I think that comes with the comfort of the relationship and the comfort with ourselves.